Hey everybody, it's Josh and JB. You are watching Radiant Reflections, or you're listening to Radiant Reflections. This is season 4, episode 12. And we are currently going through the book, Practicing the Way. Be with Jesus, become like him, do as he did, by author and teacher, Pastor John Mark Comer. We want to say again, don't forget, the number one goal of season 4 of Radiant Reflections is that you would begin developing a rule of life on your own. Begin looking at some of those things that are currently forming you. You are being spiritually formed. Maybe subtract some of those things and then add some things to your life on a regular basis that will spiritually form you to be with Jesus. We want to help you practice the way. I know that was probably too on the nose, but there we go.
That's all right. So we ended our last episode.
No coffee on this episode, by the way.
No. Although, you know what? We've got some delicious Kirkland water.
Yes.
I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to see what kind of notes I get here. I'm going straight lemon.
I'm getting grapefruit.
Very lemon.
I'm getting grapefruit.
This Kirkland sparkling water lemon flavor has definite lemon notes.
It's calorie-free, sodium-free, sweetener-free. Where was this roasted?
It's a carbonic mass. I can't even say it. Carbonic something process.
This was packaged in Seattle, Washington.
Because it was carbonated.
So that's coffee.
That's like right next door. So it's probably like, it's osmosis. Like there's some coffee somewhere in here.
Yes.
Because isn't Seattle entirely built of coffee?
Part of the clouds.
That's a thing, right?
Building structures.
I mean, I've never been there, so I've
been to Seattle. That's the birth of third wave coffee for sure. But we don't have any coffee because we just drank some. You could probably tell.
Yeah.
We've had our fill. Go back to episode 11. We had a really lovely coffee from our friend David Gang from James Coffee Co. It was a Mexican. It was good. Anyway, page 89. We're kind of going right in. If you didn't, you're going to want to watch episode 11. We hope you watch all the episodes, but particularly episode 11 because this is the next part of the
we talked about the 3 losing strategies, which were willpower, more Bible study, and the zap from heaven. And now we get into the section where he talks about some of the reasons why those things are not as effective as we might hope.
Right. Why doesn't willpower work?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't I just study the Bible more and have that fix everything?
Right. Why doesn't God just magically, like a genie, change us? He could. Right? Like he could. And sometimes he does. Sometimes he does those things. But that's not the norm. So why is that? That's a great setup, Josh. Good on you, man. Problem number 1 is
sin.
That natural tendency you were talking to your kids about in the last episode.
Yeah. To quote one of our elders, Chris Kidd here, sin is bad.
It's real bad.
Sin is real bad.
That's what he says.
Sin is real bad.
Yep.
That's right.
He's right about that.
I've tried to convince him he needs to write a book.
Yeah.
And call it Sin is Bad.
Yeah.
God is Good. Chris is Okay.
I think Chris is great. I like Chris. He's a great. But when I hear you say Sinbad, I think about that guy from Arsenio Hall.
Which did you know like that I'm fairly certain he grew up in Benton Harbor, Michigan, about an hour and a half away from here.
Interesting. I don't think he's alive. I think he passed away.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
like a heart attack or something. And he was very old.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, why is sin bad? Now we can't not think of the guy.
The mental image.
I just messed us up.
It's just there. And it's that Christmas season. He's in that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jingle All the Way. They're like fighting over that toy.
I've been lobbying hard at my house to watch Elf.
Oh,
because or are you National Lampoons?
Are you? See, I've only ever seen clips.
Oh, dude,
I just gotta see it.
It's Chevy Chase.
I know. Outside of the Three Amigos, what's that one? Fletch. Where he's like the spy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Spies Like Us with him and Dan Aykroyd.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan
of Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Well, later in his life,
he's not a
bad person. So I know they had to basically kick him off the set of Community because he was so racist towards Danny Glover.
Donald,
not Danny
Glover.
Yeah. Weird way sideways. There's your cultural commentary.
So problem 1.5 Josh and JB can't stay on topic.
Those first two paragraphs about sin on page 90, the New Testament writers speak of sin as not just an action, but also a condition of being in sin. We screw up, we offend, we hurt, we betray, we forget, we say things we regret. To err is human. Calling people sinful is no more judgmental than a doctor telling a patient they have a liver condition. It's just honest. To make progress in our formation, we must face our sin. Otherwise, the spiritual journey is like trying to run an ultra marathon with a broken leg and stage 4 cancer. Good luck.
Not.
And that's the beginning of the gospel,
work.
Josh.
Yeah.
Right. The good news of the gospel has to be
first.
bad news first. Has to be.
Well, and maybe he gets into this, right? But it's easy for us to think of sin as these, the Hitlers and the, Saddam Hussein.
Dahmers.
Like, oh, well, they're
Right.
like, that's a them thing. It's like, and I don't know where the, that coined it, but that whole but for the grace of God, that's I
There
could
go
be
I.
there too. Yeah. Have I murdered anybody? No. Have I ever wanted to? Probably. The thing.
Yeah.
Like if we were honest about the darker aspects of where our brain goes sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
We're capable of those things as well.
And the sin problem, I love, sin is the problem. It's the beginning of the gospel. It's the reason why, willpower, God zapping us doesn't work. But he kind of then breaks this out into 3 more categories.
That's what I say. Dude,
you're correct.
Just keeps.
I see what you're saying. So the number one thing there on page 90 about sin is, Josh, jump in there.
Say that again. Sorry, I was
number
looking
one.
at the hip. Yeah.
Well, it's sin done by us. Right. These are the things that we're actually.
These are things that, again, we might not be murdering people, but
Yes.
we do things that violate the designs and desires of God on a daily basis.
Yes.
So,
sin is something that we do, and there are sins that are done by us, whether we're being dishonest, we have whatever, covetousness, there's all these things.
And this is not just things that we are aware of. You read through Leviticus, and I know, like, oh, well, hey, we're a new covenant. Yep, sure, cool.
Yeah.
But one of the things that highlights is, we are held responsible even for sins that we are ignorant of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you've got quite a few chapters that are addressing, hey, if you sin, you come to find out that you unintentionally committed this sin.
Right.
Here's the sacrifice you have to make to go make restitution and to make things right. So it's not just those oh man, you know what, I cussed out the McDonald's cashier because they put onions on my burger. I haven't done that. I've witnessed that happen though. It was at a Wendy's.
Right. Come on.
The guy, I'm standing there in line.
Why are you getting bent like that?
This guy literally walks in.
Yeah.
He throws his burger down on the counter and screams at this woman that he ordered this this burger with no onions, and they put onions on it.
And what's really happening in that exchange? That this guy, maybe he just came from the doctor and he's got a terminal diagnosis, or he walked in on the missus with somebody else.
That's right. Maybe he's deathly allergic to onions. I don't know
that too, but clearly the onions on his burger were ancillary to what was actually.
And the woman he's yelling at didn't make his burger.
No. But we sin. There are things that we do. Number 2, and this is probably going to come more close to home for listeners, viewers. Josh,
this is sin done to us. So, cashier at Wendy's, who didn't make the burger, she's feeling the wrath.
She's on the receiving end of sin,
of something that she didn't do anything to deserve.
And I love that last sentence of the first paragraph. We are both perpetrator and victim, guilty and wounded. Right? Yep. We do wrong, and wrong is done to us.
Well, and to your kind of point with this particular case, you go down to the next paragraph. Hurt people hurt people.
It's true.
So, now, does that excuse our behavior? No.
But it is causation.
But it can also help us have a little bit of compassion and grace, I think, in those situations. It's all right, hey, man, this guy's riding my butt, going down the road, like, and he's like right up on me. He's like, he's zipping around. He's doing, you know what?
Right.
Maybe he's got a loved one in the car that he's trying desperately to get to the hospital. You know, like,
Yep.
What if we assume the best of people? And yeah, he's stressed out.
I need to grow in that.
Yeah. I think we all need to grow.
I need to grow in what you've just described, without a doubt.
But
what about number 3, Josh? Their bottom of 91.
Sin done around us.
Right.
The whole world is broken.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, this is not just limited to people. I mean, like Paul tells us that all creation groans, like it's waiting to be restored to its original design.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we see the effects of sin all around us in the form of sickness, injury, all of these different things, corruption.
It's funny you mentioned corruption, Josh, because Lisa and I were like, I was watching football for a little bit yesterday, and she had enough of that, and so we switched and we watched something else. This documentary on e-waste and like clothing waste is really interesting. Sin done around us in Ghana. This is a country in Africa, coastal country. 15 million garments that were donated come to Ghana per week. And they showed these images. We've all seen these images before, but we saw these images of these beautiful coastlands of Ghana. And the entire shoreline is covered with clothes. Like the rocks on the ocean shoreline, the sand, it's all clothes. They just dumped them in the ocean because they got 15 million pieces coming into their country per week. They don't know what to do with them. They come baled on like these giant bales. They're just washing up. So this is a sin that is happening in our world that is affecting these people in Ghana for they go to the beach to want to go swim like we would. And what do they encounter? 50 billion t-shirts and whatever.
Well, and the
fast fashion crap.
The twisted thing is that's happening because we think we're, the
donating.
White knight, Western world. We got to save all those poor people in Africa.
By giving
we totally decimate. I've probably referenced this on here before. Several years ago on one of the trips to Sierra Leone, met a woman who had been a missionary for 10 years in Zambia.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I believe it was Zambia.
Okay.
And she said that kind of thing, like the Goodwill type, we ship all of our leftovers there, decimated the local clothing industry. That had been,
they were making handmade beautiful things.
Yeah, they were making and this is how people made a living. Well, now instead all these, these quote unquote generous, American companies are sending this stuff over there to help them out. Yeah. And it wasn't helpful. Great book out there called When Helping Hurts. I would encourage you to pick up a copy, read that, maybe do Sacred Fire, do your your Todd Hall, and then read When Helping Hurts. It's pretty heady, but it challenges a lot of the way that we look at poverty resolution in the Western mindset.
How we're helping.
Well, because I'll just give you a quick summary. Like we view the solution to poverty as we think poverty is the lack of material goods. So how do we solve that problem? We give you material goods.
Right.
When that's not actually the core of the problem. So
that's micromanagement, not macro.
Great book. Pick it up, read it.
It comes back to the idea, teach a man to fish or give him a fish, that kind of thinking. I think a lot of times our charity is, it's the Callistos Ware, who is EOC, I think Callistos was bishop. His quote on page 92, the doctrine of original sin means that we are born into an environment where it is easy to do evil and hard to do good, easy to hurt others and hard to heal their wounds, easy to arouse men's suspicions and hard to win their trust. It means that we are each of us conditioned by the solidarity of the human race in its accumulated wrongdoing and wrong thinking, and hence wrong being. And to this accumulation of wrong, we have ourselves added by our own deliberate acts of sin. The gulf grows wider and wider. It's hard to do good.
Yes. And I mean, and he makes a point in here that, we might recognize the things that we do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where maybe we try to enact willpower.
Mm-hmm.
We try to do all of these different things. But if we don't factor in the things that have been done to us or maybe are still being done to us and the sin around us, we're never going to come up with a fully effective solution. You look at something like childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
Sin that was done to somebody, that undealt with, that will continue to affect them potentially the rest of their life.
Yes.
And so you might say, oh, well, I'm going to fix this sin problem that I have. I'll stop doing these things. But all the while, we have these programs running in the background based on the trauma that we experienced as a kid,
Yeah.
And we're like, man, why isn't this working?
Yeah. Yep. He goes on with this sin done to us for quite a while. I think the next page there, page 93, the bottom two paragraphs are really, really good. The problem is not that Westerners view sin through the lens of guilt innocence, but that they often view it solely from this one angle, and in doing so miss the full picture. Until we come to see sin as far more than the breaking of judicial laws, we will likely remain stuck in a whole life dysfunction. To that end, one paradigm that I find especially helpful for spiritual formation purposes is the idea of sin as a kind of disease of the soul and salvation as the healing of the whole person. As the Christian psychologist and expert on trauma, Dan Allender, put it, we seldom see sin at first sight at what it truly is, ill and deforming. Back to the phrase you showed us in the previous pages, Josh, hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that? If I could ask you, maybe personally, Josh, we could just pause a moment and double click on that. Have there been some places where you have discovered that it's like, I'm angry and I'm treating this person this way, that way, or whatever, but you woke up or you came to discover, oh, actually what's really going on is this?
Well, I mean, I don't want to go just too far sideways, but I think even you look at being angry with somebody, like I'll take, Nicole or the kids or something like that. Like if I'm physically in pain, right? Like I wake up and I'm like, I've got a headache. I'm more likely to be short-tempered with my kids or with Nicole. And so now hurting. Like I'm physically hurting, but now I'm more likely to do potentially some emotional damage to my wife and kids, or hey, I'm going to be short in the office, and I make that snippy remark to Kinsey or whatever. Like so now I'm going to do relational damage because I'm physically hurting, and I haven't learned how to go to. Man, you guys would be like, this guy never shuts up about Jim Wilder, right? But like the whole endure hardship well. That key piece of our walk with Jesus. Re-ask your question, man. Sorry,
I guess my question is, again, and you answered it, which was, has there been a time where you've discovered it's like you thought you wanted this thing or you thought you were behaving this way, and then you woke up to understand, oh, actually, this is what was going on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, and this is one that I haven't solved it yet. There's an awareness there. There are a lot of times where I manifest as angry, but really at the core of it, like I'm scared. Like if I'm like
the dog puts his hackles up when he's afraid.
Wow, this plays out like with my kids, right? I mean, I'm a 6 on the Enneagram. Like I'm by nature, I'm fear driven, risk averse, all of these different things. And there will be times where if I perceive, one of the kids is going to do something, and my brain computes high likelihood of, injury, of something going sideways. Because I've thought of 57 ways this could go wrong.
Sure.
And the more ways that this could go wrong, and now maybe I'm going to come down like, hey, like, get down, like, don't do that, like,
because you're genuinely afraid.
And I'm like, I don't want you to get hurt.
Right.
But now what I've done, I've just yelled at my 5-year-old son, and in he's just playing. Right. So now I've got to go, but hey, like, bud, like,
Dad was afraid
Dad is a
that if you rode your bicycle without your
jackwagon.
helmet,
Yeah,
you're gonna crack your skull open, your brain's gonna leak out like strawberry jam.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was looking for, Josh. I was interested to see, if you had, some of those things.
Yeah, so that's probably for me. That's probably the most common. This is again by nature. Fear wants to drive the ship. So
yeah, and as any six will tell you, a lot of their fears are realistic. They're not all like out in space. Like,
right, I'm not worried that like a ghost is gonna like come and kidnap me.
Well, I mean, we'll throw Pastor Ryan under the bus. He mentioned on stage, was it last week, about feeling like he was being dorky wearing a bicycle helmet until one day he was careening down a hill or something on a bike, and he just had this sick sort of revelation, a real revelation. Like, if I went head over my handlebars, I will probably get hurt pretty severely. So I think sometimes the six and or our fears can serve the person well. I think that there's a way that God uses that to protect others from dangers that they don't see. Now, you can also go over the other way and catastrophize.
Well, and it's important, even those moments of like, hey, maybe this fear is legitimate, right? But the way that I go about communicating that to my kids or to anybody else, like that's really important, because I'm probably gonna limit the effectiveness of my communication if I always go at it like oh, Dad's just angry again. Oh man, here we go.
Right.
Versus, hey, no, hey, I genuinely care about your well-being.
This is why.
This is part of it.
Yeah.
I've told my kids, they're like, some of them, I won't name names, but some of them, like, Dad, like they look so stupid. I'm like, you know what? Like, have you ever? And somebody's maybe gonna get offended by this. I don't mean any offense, but I was like, you ever met somebody with a traumatic brain injury?
Yeah.
Like, because I used to work with those individuals, right?
Yeah.
And you think you look goofy wearing a helmet, like.
Yeah, they're struggling to behave like normally.
They don't know. They don't know how to like moderate emotions. They don't know how to. Sometimes like they've lost the ability to speak.
Yes.
They've lost some of the basic daily functions from a blow to the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those fears are real.
I'm just saying, like, let's.
Well, and to circle back, I'll jump on the Wilder train. I think a lot of times these things, these responses to sin, our responses to sin, are related to that joy cup, right? What we're really seeking. I think it was Augustine. Augustine said all of our desires are actually desires for God. They're just warped, right? They're just twisted. And so those sins that we see happening all around us are people's, hear me people, don't be offended when I say this. They are people's unconscious pursuit of God in very dark and wicked ways, right? The flesh has a way of manifesting itself. I think it goes right back to the garden. It's like, do you want to be like God? He's like, yeah. I want to be with God. I walk with him every day. I love being with God. Yeah, I want to be like God. Well, if you eat this fruit, oh, okay. And that desire, I think, was innate, and it was twisted and warped. What else? 94, Josh. I love the disease. This is why I think the salvation. How can I say this as a Wesleyan worship pastor? I lean really much more towards the atonement theories in the EOC than I do any others, which has more of a sin disease kind of perspective, and that God's desire is to restore relationship and to bring healing as a physician, which he unpacks that quite a bit here. Ignatius, but our physician is the only true God, Jesus the Christ. He became subject to corruption, that he might free our souls from death and corruption and heal them, and might restore them to health when they were diseased with ungodliness and wicked lusts. Is this how you think about sin as a fatal disease? Is this how you think about Jesus as the physician of the soul? Salvation is a kind of healing. or a restoration.
Yeah, and now bounce over to 95
Yeah,
because
good.
this is a very Wesleyan thing, although maybe not so much in practice as it is in our heritage. But that first full paragraph, he talks about confession, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about healing, this is that. Hey, we got to clean out the wound. We got to do all these. If we look at it as a disease or this,
What do they call it? Debridement?
debridement.
Yeah, that's just got to scrape the guck out.
Yeah,
It's
because
yucky.
otherwise that's gonna get nasty.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you go back to some of John Wesley's practices, right? I mean, it is you're getting together with a small group on a regular basis, and you're, hey, how did you sin this week? I mean, and we're talking through those things. We're naming it.
Yeah.
So often our natural bent, and I think it's gotten really bad in a culture that privatizes faith, is we just keep it all under wraps. Like, I don't want to tell you how I sinned this past week.
Do you know why that is, Josh?
Well,
Because we don't see sin as a sickness and a disease. That's why. It's a false gospel. See, would you ever go to someone and say, I just cannot believe you have cancer. You are so stupid. How stupid could you be to let that tumor grow in your body? I cannot believe how dumb you are.
Right.
We would never say that. We would
Not
never.
usually.
I mean, no sensible human would. I mean, but we do that with sin. We do that. We shame one another, and we've experienced that enough, particularly in the Christian faith, particularly in the church, that we have become very sick-ish and fearful of talking with others.
But I'll differentiate again. This is go back to the Wilder thing. We use toxic shame, condemnation, right? Versus there is a healthy shame.
Well said.
And healthy shame is paired with
Well
the
said,
idea
Josh.
of confession.
Yes.
Right. So you come to me and you say, hey, Josh, how have you sinned this last week? And I tell you, and you remind me, hey, that as far as just, that's not who we are.
Yeah.
That's not who we
Right.
are. That's not the way that we
Yeah.
treat our wife. That's not the way that we treat our kids. That's not the way that we,
Yep.
do this thing.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
And there's that healthy shame, which is, recognition that there is a standard.
Bad news.
I didn't hit it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Holy Spirit, you got to show me what's going on in me to where I rewrite those right brain habits and patterns.
I don't know where I read it, but I think somebody had said that the barometer for spiritual health is how quickly you return to Jesus when you sin. Or do you dwell in that sickness and that illness and just sit in it? How many days, weeks, whatever go by that you're just stewing in something rather than believing by faith that when you confess it with your mouth, you confess and repent, Jesus is faithful to cleanse you from all unrighteousness. You can move on to the next thing you're going to do.
That's right. Well, I mean, I think sometimes we do it in a self-condemning way, like where we hang on to it. Other times we do it with more of like that victim mentality, and it's kind of like that self-pity. Kind of. So yeah, but we can go in either of those two ditches. I think I appreciate that he addresses in that same paragraph kind of the twofold nature of confession.
Yeah.
Right. There is the naming our sins. John, the Apostle John, in 1 John, he talks about walking in the light, bringing things to the light. Right? Confession is one of those things where we bring things into the light. But it's also confessing what is true about Christ, who he is, who we are in him. And again, I think it was in one of the last couple of episodes, we talked about that idea of identity, of how at the core of so many of these things is us believing a lie over the truth. So this confession, that second part, addresses that. Because it says, no, this is who Christ is, what he's accomplished. This is who I am in him. And it's that, again, go to the Wilder thing. Healthy shame is, hey, this isn't who we are. This isn't how we function. This is who we are. And it's that second part of reminding me who I actually am. So.
That next paragraph, I think, Josh, right below what you just read, confession is our part in dealing with sin. God is the physician. We're the patient. All we can do is set our sin in his light. His job is to deal with our sin. Our job is to confess our secrets. It's to live in a way that is open, true, and laid bare before God in community. Wow, those are easy words to read. Not so easy to live. Not so easy to live. What else, Josh? Anything else on 95 about the sickness, illness sort of thing? He talks a little bit about AA there at the bottom.
Yeah, and we've hit on that a little bit in some past episodes.
Yeah. How about 96?
The first full paragraph, second sentence. The human capacity for self-deception is staggering. So,
yeah.
It's like, yep. That's why I love, and I've probably referenced multiple times on here, Andy Stanley, his book, Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. He has this series of 5 questions, and it's looking at those. And one of those questions is, am I being honest with myself, really? Because we're really good at selling ourselves on bad ideas.
Yeah.
Like, I could justify just about anything.
Yep. And you might be able to find scriptures, too.
You can back it up.
Oh, yeah.
And then we feel pretty, not only have I justified my sin, I've actually made it like a spiritual
I wrapped it
gain.
in Jesus language.
That's right. Me sinning is actually a spiritual plus in the columns here. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
That last sentence on 96 before we get into problem number 2, the more we hide, the less we heal.
Well, and that's the tactic of the enemy, right? Isolation and condemnation.
Cover ourselves with fig leaves.
We hesitate to bring these things into the light, sometimes legitimately because we're scared the people around us are going to shut us out. And we know that we need connection to the community.
Right.
So, I don't want to bring this up because what are they going to think about me? Are they going to...
Right.
Yeah, you got to...
Right.
You got to stay away from
because
here.
that happens.
It does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen.
Yep.
I mean, and that's just a mess of, all the masks we work, the lie that we've got to have all our crap together and, have perfect lives if we're following Jesus, right?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. So.
Nope. And you won't get there, Josh, down on this side. 96, he turns a corner and he goes into the second problem. Again, remember, the second problem is why just going to church, reading your Bible, giving, the holy zap, willpower, why this doesn't work. The second reason why it doesn't work is you've already been formed, right? So you think about when you mix up a box of Jell-O, right? You could put Jell-O, as we know from Jim in the office. You can make Jell-O.
Put some staplers in there.
You could do anything you want with Jell-O, right? You can form it and shape it. And we've all been molded by our childhood. We've been molded by our life experiences. We've been shaped and formed by our church faith experiences, all sorts of different things. And that is a problem.
So Christ's likeness is like the stapler. Our current formation is the Jell-O. We have to work through the Jell-O to get the stapler. Like Dwight did.
Yes. So Dwight, yeah.
But instead, I think he just yelled at Jim about it.
Of course he did. Page 97. So
these are the 3 things that have formed us.
Right. And the number one thing is the stories that we believe, right? That second paragraph, I see, Josh.
Yeah.
You've got some of that. I'll just read that. The stories we come to believe give shape to 1,000 daily decisions. They give shape to what we do or don't do and who we become. As my friend Pete Hughes of King's Cross Church in London likes to say, the story you live in is the story you live out. Wow.
Well, and he gives an example, which again hits on something that we talked about earlier. But he says if we buy into this kind of American dream, like more money equals more happiness,
right,
that will inform a lot of the things that we do.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to make decisions on a daily basis because that's what I'm chasing after. Because, if I could only make a few more dollars, was it Rockefeller or whatever? Like, how much more do you need? Just a little bit more.
President-elect.
A little bit more.
President-elect Donald Trump was asked the same question. How much more money do you need? And he replied with something quantifiable. He said 10%. I need 10% more.
Huh.
Okay.
Now, if he got that, I wonder if he would need 10% more again.
And again, the great prophet, Larry the Cucumber, was asked by Bob the Tomato. Do you remember the beginning?
I like that.
Bob and Larry are talking. They're talking about toys in the beginning of a VeggieTales episode, and Bob asks Larry, like, how many more toys do you need? And Larry asks the question, how many are there? So well said. Like, how many toys? Meaning, what does that mean? Proverbs talks about, a fire is one of the 4 things that never says enough. You can't put a certain kind of log on a fire and then have fire forever.
It's just going to burn forever.
It's just going to burn forever. This is who we are as people. Like, as we pursue sin, it is constantly consuming. And there's no end to it. We could say 10%. We could say just one more dollar. We could say whatever. But the truth is that we want it all. We want everything.
Mm-hmm.
We want to ascend
Mm-hmm.
and sit on the throne of the Most High. Isaiah, 14. Yeah. The second thing, problem about formation, Josh, what is that on page 98?
Our habits.
Oh boy.
It says,
We need a camp here, Josh.
Last sentence there. What we repeatedly do, we become.
Come on.
So this
Come
is
on.
where, again, we've talked about the audit. We've talked about tracking, like all these different things to
James
see,
Clear.
to see what are our habits. And once we see those, we'll probably get a decent picture of who we're becoming. And then we can say, you know what? I don't know if I want to become that person.
No. And we are in the golden age, listeners, viewers, of being able to find this kind of information out. I mean, there's so much great content out there. Again, Atomic Habits by James Clear, not a follower of Jesus, but absolutely phenomenal book. We are little more than the cumulative effect of our regular habits. What we repeatedly do, we become. The things we do something, listen, they do something to us. They get into the core of our being and shape our lives and longings. That's why there is some real truth in habit stacking. It's real. Like, and I think now it used to be 30 days, right? If you did something 30 days, I think it's over 100 days now.
They keep moving the goal line, kind of a thing.
As our attention span is reduced, it takes longer to establish habits of health. That's why, back to last episode, all of our New Year's habits, is it the third week of January?
They don't pan out. Yeah, end of January. It used to be like middle of February.
Not anymore.
Like you'd get, yeah. We're getting worse.
Yeah, we are getting worse. The algorithm, the demonic algorithm is forming us.
There's
shaping us.
that metal album again.
Yeah, I could spend a lifetime just on this.
So it's important to remember,
about
though,
habits.
and he's brought this up earlier in the book, that it's not just about like, oh, I'm going to habit stack, because he established fairly early on that to actually live into this way of Jesus, to live as an apprentice of Jesus, you start with subtraction. Start with subtraction. So yeah, it's not just like,
Reducing.
oh, hey, I've got to, I've got to figure out how to be strategic with these,
And you just said really importantly, Josh, the first step is actually an audit. The first step is actually awareness. Like what are you actually, what has, notice my word there, listener, viewer, has formed you? What has brought you to be the person that you are? And let's just use a normal kind of everyday in your face thing. If you're 500 pounds, right? You became that person because you ate McDonald's 6 times a day.
Well, but it could be a little bit more complicated than that. But
at 500 pounds, I don't think it could be.
It can be. It can.
You can't be 500 pounds and it be genetic.
There are a variety of influences there, but I would imagine
mostly.
a large percentage of people in that camp.
Right.
It's probably a cumulative effect of decisions and habits, like you said.
Decisions. So you start with kind of paying attention. So in that case, you'd be doing the old-fashioned calorie counting. Like, what am I putting in that's giving me the results? Which will require very quickly subtraction, right? Like instead of 5,000 calories per day, it's 3,000 calories per day, or whatever it might be. It always begins a rule of life. Always, we can use that superlative, friends. It always begins with subtraction. Always. What's the third thing that's forming us?
Our relationships.
Oh,
And
it's huge.
this is the conversation that we
Huge.
just having with my kids that I referenced.
Yeah, huge.
We become like the people we spend time with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And back to the weight thing. If I think the statistic is if 2 or more of your friends fall into the American definition of obesity, you're 60% more likely to be obese yourself. Those habits, that lifestyle that yields that sort of unwellness will affect you. It can affect you. And it doesn't guarantee it. But if I'm a betting man, 3 out of 5, yeah, I bet 3 out of 5.
Did you know my street name is Uncle Fatty? Did you know that?
What?
Yeah, that's a real thing. Now, typically, I think the rules are you're not supposed to give yourself a street name, but I totally gave myself that street name.
Talk about that, Josh.
Nicole and the kids.
You are thin.
Nicole
fellow.
and the kids, like, they found this stupid YouTube video, and it's all about like the fattest monkey. I think he's died since, but he would he would eat like Twinkies and crap like this.
Not just
like,
bananas.
I mean, and he was like, and like fattest monkey, he was he was like 20 pounds overweight. But I mean, it's just anybody. I mean, he's just walking around like, and somehow it came out like, oh, that's a good nickname. So I'm Uncle Fatty. So
That doesn't sound very nice, Josh.
I don't know, but I don't know. What's your street name?
I don't have a street
You have a
name.
street name?
You asked me last episode. What did you ask
Your
me? What?
news anchor name.
I'm just not creative in any way like this to come up with these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to come up with a street name and a news anchor name for you.
Our relationships. There's a ton that we could read here in the next couple pages. As disciples of Jesus, we must carefully discern the ways that we've been formed or malformed, not by the kingdom, but by our last names, our family lines, our political tribes, or our zip codes. This does change things. Like, you are right now, I'm just going to go into that next paragraph, currently, as we speak, being formed by a complex web of ideas, cultural narratives, reoccurring thoughts, habits, daily rhythms, spending patterns, relationships, family ties, activities, environments, and much more. Just by waking up and going about your life, we don't get the luxury of a blank slate. There are forces within and without with a vested interest, insert demonic algorithm, in us not becoming like Jesus. Therefore, all Christian formation, listen to this. This is a key premise of the book. All Christian formation is counter formation. Josh, unpack a little bit what you understand that word to mean, counter formation.
Well, again, he's established the idea that we've already been formed. We are being formed.
Mm-hmm. Molded.
So yeah. And I mean, he goes against the idea of the blank slate, right? Like we don't come in with like, oh, hey,
right.
We start with no, predisposition towards anything. We're just gonna, we'll see what happens. Kind of, nope. We have from the time, well, probably before you took your first breath outside your mother's womb, you have these things actively working against you.
Genetics.
And these things have shaped you into the person that you are today. And a lot of those things, if you're anything like me, those things don't look a whole lot like Jesus.
On a kinder note, we had this conversation with Micah yesterday, my youngest son, right? My wife's dad, his name is Rick. He is very, very bald and has been for quite some time.
Hey.
Genetically, what do we know? It's baldness is on the mother's side. So we told Ian and Micah, sorry, guys.
I'm a genetic anomaly with that, though.
Okay.
We still haven't figured out
Your mom's?
my whole hair thing. Because, dude, my grandpa Jolman, he had a way better
Your
hair
mom's dad?
than me, and he died at like age 85, and he had way more hair than I had when I was like 25, kind of a thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just like some weird.
But the point is,
I'm just weird.
There are genetics that are, there are things that are, there's a reason that your eyes are a certain color, your facial features. Like you can stand next to someone in your family and like, oh, those people are related.
Yeah, they're related.
Yeah.
So, but no, so it's working against those things that have already made us into who we are today, and undoing, redoing some of those things. That's where it gets into what we talked about in the last episode, kind of that deconstruction, in a sense, right?
For the purpose of reconstructing.
Yes, into the likeness of Jesus.
Yes.
Because what I think, what I believe, what I feel about some things is not accurate.
Yeah.
So I have to be open to the possibility that Jesus wants to change that in me, even though right now I feel like I'm right, though.
And I not to sound older or to sound old, but I'm going to make a grandpa statement here. That's what my kids would say.
Get off the grass.
It's so much harder for people today, particularly kids. The reason that counter formation is so crucial and such a reality is because of the magnitude of the forces that they're coming against. Josh, I didn't have a phone in my pocket when I was in high school, right?
I was 21 before I got my first
That I
cell
could
phone.
look at pornography whenever I wanted, free. I could just turn that thing on. If I wanted to access pornography as a kid, it had to be,
You had to find a
somebody's
magazine
dad
somewhere.
had to have a magazine or a nudie VHS tape in their house and whatever. Like there was none of the kinds of things. That's why I love the superlative that he uses. All Christian formation is counterformation, and we need to recognize that there are demonic things that are working against us. Again, live no lies. There are these forces that are forming you and are pushing with such force to get you to go in a direction that is against God. And we must take on the practices of Jesus as a militant stand to be counterformed against. I mean, we'll use the euphemism. You need to swim upstream. You need to be that fish swimming upstream.
Well, and to your point, I think like people have so many, like the number of inputs
Oh man.
that we have
Yeah.
is insane. We live in such a soundbite culture. Like, so we get, and a lot of these things are happening subconsciously, but I saw this headline. I saw this post on, Instagram or
In times
Facebook
past, you
or-
never
or
would have heard
X or-
that.
Right.
This flood and
you
tsunami
never
in
would have
this
been
other
exposed
world.
to some of these ideas.
Or country, I should
Right.
say.
I mean, now there's a positive in the sense that, hey, I can be exposed to ideas outside of my own perspective and can learn and grow from that. But I think just the sheer number of inputs that we have make it really hard, because we might not even remember. We might arrive at some solution or idea of like, oh, this is the way the world is. We don't even know how we got there because we've cobbled together hundreds or
Threads.
thousands
Yeah.
of threads
Yes.
into, oh, this is
A tapestry of fear.
yeah.
Josh, I just finished Kron's book, and he said, the world we live in is the worst world for sexes to live in. A majority of the world, majority of people
We're
in the world,
at least like 50% of
more
the
than
population.
50%
Yeah.
is sixes. It is the worst world, and it's because of the data points. It's because of how much like we can know always. I'll tell you just from my own experiences, because I can lean in a 6 way, even though I'm an 8. I lean in a 6 way, and I've tested as a 6.
Do you remember
once.
during COVID?
I tested
You
as
tested
a
as a
6.
6?
Yeah, and I'm interested to take the test again. I'm beginning to think that all of these things, there's common thread, but a lot of it is circumstantial and seasonal. So the idea of personality tests, like, oh no, this is baked into who you are, you cannot change. I'm beginning to question that. But at any rate, I recently made the decision. I noticed some patterns in my thinking and behavior that were not Christ-like, that were not godly. And I started looking at some of the things that I was taking in, and I felt like God was telling me, you need to cut your daily intake of social media in half. And I've shared on the podcast before, you all have smartphones. You all know you literally set up screen limitations, and it's like a budget in your bank. Most places, if you use a debit card and you try to swipe your debit card on about zero balance, it gets declined. It's not like a credit card. That's how my phone is set up. When I get to the end of the budget for the day, it's done. And I've already begun to experience victory. I'll tell you a small thing. This is such a small thing. Amazon, is this way, but part of the documentary we watched was about Amazon. But I carry a knife every day, right? In my pocket. And I have this pocket knife.
Spyderco?
Yeah,
Is that a Spyderco?
yes,
Yeah.
it's a nice knife. It's a great knife. It's a good knife. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not damaged. It works perfectly fine. And I get this idea. I'm like, I need a new knife. I need a new knife. So I start looking up Benchmade's. Like I start looking up, Spyderco's. I'm looking at the Ken Onion Kershaws and all this stuff. And I have been reducing my intake of social media for quite some time. And I get this particular knife last night. I'm sitting on the couch with Lisa. I get this knife in my I can afford the knife. I can buy the knife. It's not going to affect my family, my finances in any way. It's fine. I can buy it. I get it in the checkout, and I just hear the Holy Spirit say to me, you have a pocket knife. You don't need that. And that is not a normal behavior for me because my normal behavior is the one button that says click once to buy, ship it to me. It comes in a box. I don't care. Whatever. Yeah. And maybe I use it. Maybe I don't. It's terrible. Just the amount of consumption. But I am correlating that directly to a reduction in the inputs of formation. So I am now, I took a step of counter formation by grace and by the Spirit of God to reduce my intake of what was forming me in order to do and be different than I was. And that little silly story about a pocket knife, that's silly. It's dumb. I get it.
It's not though. I mean,
but for me, it wasn't. I saw God's hand in it.
Well, and at the heart of that is contentment, which Scripture talks about.
Need it. So, need to grow in that. Yeah. There's so much more on 100, 101. Let me read this last couple bits here, Josh.
Okay.
Will you indulge me?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. 100. If we don't take our discipleship to Jesus seriously, the odds are very high that we will become less like Jesus over time and more like Rome or LA or London or Lagos and so on. The novelist Flannery O'Connor once advised, push as hard as the age that pushes against you. Whew, that's good. We have to push back on the forces that seek to deform us to keep us from reaching our potential in Jesus. This will likely start with, again, a kind of formation audit. An honest look at all the current forces in our lives that are deforming us into the image of the world, the flesh, and the devil, and their intentional replacement with stories, habits, and relationships to index us toward formation into the image of Jesus. It will require us to embrace that all life is spiritual formation. Each moment of each day is like a liturgy, a sacred ritual designed to shape our hearts. As Tish Harrison Warren wrote in her book, Liturgy of the Ordinary, examining my daily liturgy as a liturgy, as something that both revealed and shaped what I love and worship, it allowed me to realize that my daily practices were malforming me, making me less alive, less human, less able to give and receive love throughout my day. The alternative, friends, is to practice the way, to take up a whole constellation of life choices that's different from the majority culture around us. To make choices that aim our love and longing at union with God and our formation into his likeness. We can push back. We can partner with Jesus to become like Jesus, a human being who is, as the ancient sage Irenaeus put it, fully alive. Of course, Josh, this raises an essential question. How? Good timing there. How do we do this? Well,
we'll find out next time.
You'll have to come back for another episode of Radiant Reflections. This has been episode 12, season 4. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. We want to encourage you. Yeah, Josh maybe we'll make more coffee. I could take some.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
Oh.
Please like and share this podcast. I think after the first of the year, when Josh and I as staff pastors here get through the jungle of Christmas and what it means to be on staff during Christmas, we need to make a new subscription goal.
Well, we've got the goal. We just have to figure out what we're going to do. 1,500 is the goal.
I think we're pretty close to that. 1.2. Anyway.
Yeah, we're at 12.
Well, help us. Help us by getting more subscribers. If you're not subscribed to this channel, I only watch the YouTube channels I subscribe to. I only listen to the podcasts I subscribe to. So please subscribe, like if you're on Spotify, follow us on Spotify. If you are on Apple Music, please give us a 5-star review and type out a review about your experience listening to Radiant Reflections. It's way more than Josh and I's bantering. It's also the great Bible teaching from guys like Josh and Ryan and Kinsey and Pam. There's great Bible teachers here. So thanks for joining us. Yeah. God bless you guys.